That's the point I'm trying to fucking make. Why are people so dense? Why is this so difficult to comprehend? Yeah, I am being patronizing. I don't know who the f you are, and you're over here. I'm so old. I'm so old. I'm so old, dog. HasanAbi Doctrine, a guide for nation building. Rule 1, get nukes. Rule 2, do not give up the nukes. Rule 3, if you're accused of having nukes, drop everything immediately and find some nukes.
Here is the perfect representation of Democrats not taking ownership over this unimaginably popular bipartisan idea amongst the base of support, and a right-wing grifter taking advantage of that messaging vacuum. Tucker Carlson versus the Economist.
Clearly, I think you and I agree. We have both been critical of the Israeli government. I just want to kind of clarify terms a bit here.
Well, I've really been critical.
Tucker taking a second there to be like, do I say it? Yeah, I'm going to say it. Like, you can just see, because it's like it's like a 98 mile per hour fastball, middle of the strike zone. Like, come on, lady. Are you fucking serious?
Yeah.
Your editors were caping for Israel immediately after October.
I've told you at the beginning that we were against this war.
What do you think of Gaza?
What do I think of Gaza?
Yeah.
I think the war in Gaza, to start with, was a perfectly reasonable response in response to the horrors of October 7th. I think now the places, I've been there. Have you been to Gaza? I've been to Gaza since the war started.
They would not
it's
let
catastrophic.
me into Gaza. Trust me, very few journalists get into Gaza.
Yeah, no, I went with the IDF. It's the only way that you can go in, but nonetheless you go in and you see a flattened place. I think it is a disaster for the future of Israel, a disaster for the Palestinian people, a horror, 70,000 people dead.
Why would you describe it first as a disaster for the future of Israel?
Oof, such a good
tens of thousands.
That's a bar. Like, this kind of shit is endlessly appealing to the average person because they understand it. They understand what's going on. They already had their suspicions, many of which would have been considered anti-Semitic. These suspicions would have been considered anti-Semitic not that long ago. But now it's the majority suspicion, right? It's the majority opinion. It's the majority suspicion. And it's correct. It's correct to raise that question, to be like, why do you say Israel first? Oh, it's a disaster for Israel? Tough titties. Would you say World War II was a disaster for the Nazi Germany project first before you have a conversation about like the Holocaust, before you talk about the real victims? It's fucking ridiculous, right?
Thousands of civilians murdered, but it's foremost a disaster for the future
No,
of
I didn't
Israel.
say
No, it's
foremost.
foremost a disaster for the families of the dead kids.
I made 3 points.
Because
let me
everybody
just
sucks up to Israel in this way that suggests they're afraid. And everyone is afraid, and you know that. Everyone's like, the real problem is calling people anti-Semites allows real anti-Semites to flourish. It's like, no, actually, the real problem with calling people anti-Semites who aren't is accusing the innocent of a crime they didn't commit. And the real crime in Gaza is killing people who did nothing wrong. So those are the real problems, I would say. But no one can say it because you have to be like, oh no, but really, October 7th
I don't know what you're talking about, Kaza. We're having a...
Everyone watching this knows what I'm talking about.
It's true. Yep. It's true. Like, he's cooking. He's fucking absolutely cooking, okay? It's ridiculous. And it's one of those things where in the room, you might think, depending on the rooms that you are in, you might think, oh, you're saying the right things for the watchers of the Economist, right? But in the outside world, this video is going to be published. And when people see this video, they're not going to agree with you. They're not going to look at you as like a person who actually is doing a great job holding, Tucker Carlson to account. This shit's going to go fucking viral.
Because there is, by the way, like where you could have a dialogue with Tucker Carlson about how, hey, listen, you talk about all this stuff and you talk such a huge fucking game about how much you hate Israel. And yet, like, you go to the White House, you still have a relationship with the people whom you condemn as like being handmaidens.
The number one antidote, the number one fucking counter for the likes of Tucker is literally to say, you've been very critical of the ethnic supremacy that Israel represents, and yet you've spent an entire lifetime making similar arguments about making America the exact ethnic enclave that you want to design it as, where you talk about legacy Americans.
I mean, I think
he has no answer for that. Like, because these guys at the end of the day want Israel, but for their in-group in America.
Also, I would add one other piece to that too, which is that they want Israel for their own in-group, but that they know that the only way that they can get to that, like at this moment, like right now, because this is the most visible thing about Tucker's politics right now. And when I hear from people anecdotes about family members who are getting turned on to some, like, you know, weirder political takes, let's say, a lot of it does come through like this exact, you know, I mean, like libs love the phrase like radicalization pipelines and sort of figurative language like that to describe what's going on. But I mean, like, this is how it happens because somebody like him is able to, I mean, like essentially speed run past these contradictions because they recognize the incredible, I mean, like this is low hanging fruit. This is the easiest issue on which you can outflank the political establishment, no matter what side you're on.
Especially because my big fear is that Tucker Carlson is actually winning favor with liberals. He's not actually winning favor with the Republicans. Like, there are still Republicans who respect him, right? They might have a disagreement with him on Israel, but they still respect him nonetheless. And those Republicans might actually play ball if Tucker Carlson is the next candidate, right? Because maybe they place a higher degree of priority on like making America a WASP nationalist country, which is Tucker Carlson's primary purpose here. And what's terrifying about this is he's actually reaching to the other side of the aisle and winning favor as an earnest communicator against Israel at a time when the National Party is not doing that, because there is unfortunately a massive information and leadership vacuum on the issue of Israel, okay, on the Democratic Party side. This is a huge problem, and I don't think people are recognizing that this is a huge problem. It's very frustrating. Those liberals aren't liberals because you don't know who Tucker Carlson is at this point. I don't know what to tell you. Brother, I think you're oblivious to how little people pay attention. This is a highly clippable, highly salient, very viral moment. They see that, and that's all they know about Tucker Carlson, and that's it. And the only reason why Tucker Carlson gets to be this guy, the only reason why he gets to be this person is because, unfortunately, in spite of the fact that this is a 90 to 10% issue on the Democratic base of support, the party is not acting like it's a 90-10 issue. Okay, that's it. When Chuck Schumer comes out and says, like, my primary purpose is to defend Israel, I'm going to make sure that Israel gets all the funds it needs to continue waging its war at a time when Americans are totally aware of what's going on in terms of Israel taking the driver's seat on our Middle Eastern policy. It's the Democratic Party is not even doing, is not even leaning into their own base. They are,
and also like
Tucker's
like asking questions. So it's like, is Tucker Carlson a Zionist? Like we literally the Gavin Newsom. That's essentially what he's, you know, he got asked more similar questions by Politica, where he talks about how he is a Zionist or whatever. And I think that like if you're going to do the split screen of how politicians in the Democratic Party, how high profile figures are responding in this moment, it like, you know, it hews closer to the Gavin Newsom side of the spectrum, where it's like halting criticism of the state of Israel combined with an affirmation in the an affirmation of the underlying ideology for it. And I think for somebody like Tucker Carlson, it just seems extremely clear. Oh my God, that is wild.
Tucker Carlson has a minus 27% approval
I did not
rating.
realize it was that negative.
Nick Fuentes has a minus 6%. What the
okay, but
fuck?
look at the name. That's not, you can't do Nick Fuentes.
Clavicular has a minus 2% because they don't have name recognition.
They've
chatters.
none. The Tucker Carlson thing,
am I on this list? I'm surprised that they didn't put me on this list, considering that they fucking... Zohran Mamdani's only at +1. That's crazy.
What's the source for this?
I don't know.
Yeah, James Fishback at an 11 to 7 + 4.
Yeah. What is this? National polling by TPSI official. Jeffrey Epstein is at a +12 approval. Wait, what?
No. That's a lie. He's down. He's the negative 70.
He has a 12% approval.
But that's what I mean. I mean, I like these kinds of polls.
Nah, to me, this poll is bullshit. There's no shot. There's no fucking shot.
I mean, directionally, I think that there's a lot of truth to it. But that's kind of it.
Yeah, no shot. 12% approval for Jeffrey Epstein. Look two above Zohran, Charlie Kirk at +3. Yeah, get the fuck out of here. And James Fishback has a higher approval. Aiden Ross has a higher approval than Zohran Mamdani. Yeah, this poll sucks dick, brother.
I like 50 public figures. They went with 50. Also, I love who's in this that's a politician. Gretchen
Ben
Whitmer.
Shapiro at +8. Kai
Mark
Cenat at +9.
Levin at +7 is pretty funny.
Yeah, no, this is ridiculous. This is a ridiculous poll. Throw
Pete
it in
Buttigieg happy
was
with
this
it.
polled in Tel Aviv? Yeah. This poll coming to you straight out of Tel
it's-
Aviv, baby.
It's yeah, because that actually is like Netanyahu.
It's the best poll. You are an anti-Semite if you do not like this poll.
Listen, in Israel, sometimes we have a poll. I mean, he does. I actually realized last night how much Netanyahu sounds like Anton Chigurh from No Country for Old Men.
Yeah, and he also behaves like him too, so it's perfect.
Step out of your car, sir.
Yeah.
The Palestinians
Epstein would
will
be
not
plus-
step out of their car.
Epstein would be +90 if this was polled in Israel. True. That's how we know it's not polled in Israel. You're right, Chatter. Why would
Mr. Arafat, I'm asking you to flip a coin.
Ross Barker says, I had a very good conversation with a very prominent right-wing person recently. Won't say who it is, but it was for a book I'm doing. And he said flat out, conservatives who do not know how to hit Zohar Mamdani, they're outflanked the way Trump used to outflank the left. Yeah.
I think that's right. I think that
They don't know. Because he's doing
like
the
Trump like supported the Iraq war. Trump was
doing
like,
the
we need
math
1 million dead Iraqis. And then he's like 10 years later, he's like, actually, we went into Iraq. It was an awful mistake, and it worked for him. It worked. It didn't matter that he was lying. Partly because it just doesn't matter.
Yeah. Look at what Tucker is doing and what Zero Dems are doing. Yeah, I mean, Tucker Carlson visiting the Palestinian refugees in Qatar who were wounded during the Israeli genocide in Gaza.
And by the way, people around the world see this. I
Yeah.
think that it's one of the things that I actually really resent about the people don't know who if you don't know who Tucker Carlson is by now, you're a fucking rube. It's like, all right, I'm sorry that 7 billion people around the world did not watch Crossfire in the fucking 2000s.
Or like his 2016 run on Fox News where he's on a tear about leaning into straight up white supremacist narratives.
When he was doing his nightly.
And he won that too. The Republican Party does great replacement theory messaging with regular frequency. When at a time when Tucker Carlson was doing it, he was first to market in such a position of prominence, right?
All right, I'm gonna go now.
Okay. That was a big fucking deal, guys. That was a big fucking deal when Tucker Carlson did that shit. I remember I covered it. I covered it extensively. That was new. And now it's no longer an issue at all for many prominent Republicans.
Bye, chat.
All right, Noah's out for now. He might be here later.
In your copious podcasting about this in the last 2 weeks, you have made the argument very strongly that the United States has been pushed into something not in its own national interest by pressure from Israel and the lobbying power of Israel.
Well, it has been. The question is whether the person who makes the ultimate decision, who would be President Trump, should have pushed back. That's it. Of course, Trump should have pushed back.
As previous presidents have done.
To some extent, some very limited extent. George W. Bush didn't push back. We wound up in the Iraq war, and now everyone pretends, had nothing to do with Israel. I was there. I was talking to Bush. That's not true. That's a lie. And that's why it's so important.
Low key, I'm here for the Israel hate. But if we're gonna be serious, the notion that Israel pushed America into the Iraq war, I would say a quarter of the way correct. As far as what level, did they absolutely push for the Iraq war? Yes. But what degree of influence they have over the final decision? Maximum a quarter, maybe 15%. It was not this. The Iran thing is different, right? You have to work with new information. As you guys know, I've always talked about how America retains the final decision and is the final has the final say on these sorts of incidents, right? And this is precisely what I mean. America could still decouple from Israel and decide, no, we're done with this. We're done. The one phone call dynamic still very much exists. With Iraq, it's a different dynamic than Iran. With Iraq, we definitely wanted to do it. We definitely wanted to do it for oil interests. We definitely wanted to do it. The Israel part of it was a cherry on the top. This also benefited Israel's interest in the region, certainly, right? which was the cherry on the top. But with Iran, you can absolutely make the argument, which you don't really need to make an argument. They've already openly revealed this reality. You know, Trump, Marco Rubio, Mike Johnson, numerous Democrats in the Gang of Eight that have been in these closed door meetings. Like, they've all said across the board that, like, Israel was the reason why we waged war on Iran. So I would definitely say that Iran is different than Iraq. Now, that's the difference between someone like myself and someone like Tucker Carlson, who is, in my opinion, engaging in the classic, like, oh, Israel pushed us into all of these wars, the Pat Buchanan narrative. And I think the reason why these guys do it is because they want to take away the responsibility from the beautiful WASPs, right? Had the U.S. done the Iraq war without Israel pressure? Yes. 100,000% fuck yes. What kind of crack are you smoking on if you think that in the absence of Israeli pressure, America would be like, oh, I guess we shouldn't go to war with Iraq? Are you crazy? Dude, Dick Cheney was writing maps and parsing out Iraqi oil fields in like 1994. He had the maps ready to go since 1994. You're out of your fucking mind if you think that wasn't already the primary goal here. Because remember, we didn't have energy independence back then. So the material need for American extraction was there. And it still exists, of course. It's still very much there. But like now at least there is like a little bit more cause for restraint. As a matter of fact, a lot of the oil and gas industry initially would talk about how, fracking is good because it will stop our unnecessary warmongering, right? We don't have to, fracking is good. We'll have energy independence. We'll become an oil exporter and we won't have to like go and do these like unnecessary fucking wars, right? Before the fracking boom, we had a very different calculation. The idea that this was an Israeli operation, the idea that we did this at the behest of Israel is insincere.
From my perspective, to say out loud what is true before history is rewritten and disappears.
Very clear.
And it's lying and it gets us here. Because we say, oh, no, lobbying efforts had no effect. Really? We say that about our pharmaceutical policy? No. Everybody understands that every policy a large government makes, including ours, is influenced by various stakeholders who were affected by that policy. But this is the one area we have to be like, no, it had nothing to do with the fact that his biggest donors were pushing him to do this, or the BB visited 7 times in 1 year. Are you joking? I'm not going to play along with the lies anymore. I don't hate Jews. I don't hate Israel. I love my country. This has happened yet again. I can give you a whole list of previous times where it's happened. And I think we need to know what happened so we don't hurt ourselves further.
I am not saying don't blame Israel. I think Israel has its own national interests and Israel was certainly pushing for things. But I think there is more agency and therefore more responsibility with the President of the United States and the Trump administration.
I wouldn't disagree. He represents me. I live here.
You want to know why this is an Israel first narrative? Because when Joe Biden was president and we were like, dude, get Israel to cut it out. Stop sending fucking weapons to Israel. Define your red lines. They were like, well, Israel's a sovereign state. It's going to do what it has to do. Now, Israel got America to go fucking bomb Iran. And they're like, well, Israel's a sovereign state. But at the end of the day, it's very obvious that it's very obvious that this is in America's interest as well. That's why we're doing it. Like, oh, we're operating in tandem with Israel now. I thought it was Iran that's behind everything bad. Let's take out the big bad. I love that, dude. Americans just want to blame Israel because it saves people from looking at the truth of the U.S. empire, why and how the U.S. inspired and financed the Nazis, fascists, eugenicists, and the world over in the first place. Yes, this is definitely a big part of it. And that's why Tucker Carlson engages in this argument. He says, not my WASPs, not my big, beautiful WASPs. They would never do this, right? They are under the spell of the international Jewry. He's not going to say that, obviously. He's far too skilled as a propagandist to ever like reveal a position such as that, unless it becomes like super favorable to openly say shit like that. You know what I mean? Even if he believes it, he's not going to say it. But yeah, this is a lot of ass covering, a lot of face saving. Like America and American politicians are simply being goaded into this war by Israel. Like it's not something that they are also personally invested in. That's a major difference between someone like myself and Tucker Carlson. Having said that, of course, Tucker Carlson is still cooking in this interview because the other person on the other side is a liberal Zionist, a Zionist monster. Like we constantly destabilize these other countries, we constantly fuck with their shit. But like, why are we doing that? Who is this for? What's the purpose? That's precisely the reason why I think when Donald Trump was saying like, I'm an isolationist, like why should we be doing any of this stuff? It's not good for anybody. That was a salient message that a lot of Americans identified with.
But that's important because in the way you
Israel
described
pushed
it
him
is,
into this. Now, he shouldn't have gone along with it. He should have pushed back. But to pretend that Trump woke up one morning is like, no, I think
I'm
we're
not
going to...
suggesting that, to be clear.
Israel pushed him. The prime minister... And by the way, it's not Israel. There are a lot of people who disagree in Israel. I know some of them. It was the prime minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, who pushed our president into doing this. And
wow, it's like I'm hearing Bernie Sanders.
I hope this is the last time that Netanyahu or any foreign head of state will ever push an American president to do something that hurts America.
Well, let's talk about that because I think we may be, as you yourself said earlier, at a tipping point in terms of the rapid decline within the United States for support for Israel. Maybe. And you see it huge. I mean, you've seen it for several years on the Democratic side, you're now seeing it on the conservative side, and you're seeing a collapse amongst younger people. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. How quickly is that going to change the politics of Israel in the United States?
I mean, it's hard to know. There doesn't seem to be a direct connection, not just on Israel or foreign policy, but on almost any issue between what our leaders believe and do and what the public thinks and wants. The public begins to believe in their frustration at their declining standard of living, for example, or declining birth rates, or whatever it is that's getting worse, and a lot is, that there's no way to use legitimate means to change it. Voting doesn't work. If they believe that, then they will, by definition, find other ways, and those ways are destructive, and I don't want that. So I think it's very important that a government, even a non-democracy, even a monarchy, respond to the concerns of the population. You can ignore them for a while. If you ignore them for too long, you get overthrown.
Let's talk, though, a little bit more about how this declining support for Israel, which I think is one of the most significant political shifts in the United States in recent years, how is that shaping the MAGA movement? I mean, are you now seeing, I mean, when I look at the opinion polls, I'm told that there's 100% support amongst MAGA or 95% support for the war. On the other hand, you're clearly a man with a large number of followers who is making a very, very different argument.
I was standing next to Trump at his house when he got elected. I've known him a long time. I talked to him a lot. So, I don't fully understand what MAGA is, but I know that the core promise of the Trump political movement, Make America Great Again, was America First. And it was articulated by him repeatedly at every campaign stop for 10 years. So everyone in America knows this. I think everyone globally knows this. The core of this movement was the idea that you would, and we could debate about how you do it, but you would try to put the interest of your country at the center of every calculation about how you manage your country and how you interact with the world. It's the single most obvious and single most popular political concept ever devised.
Do you think Donald Trump has betrayed America First?
I think that this war is something that he promised he wouldn't do, not once, but countless times. And until YouTube is banned, we'll be able to prove that. And the idea behind it is not only contrary to America First, it may be its inverse. There's no argument that changing the regime in Iran helps the United States. And if there is an argument, I'd love to hear it. And by the way, if that argument is sensible and convincing, I will support it. All I care about is the United States. But I haven't heard that argument a single time. All I've heard is the kind of tiresome fear-mongering about nuclear weapons, which Iran did not have. It's insulting, actually, even to make that argument to me, that Iran's nuclear program posed such a threat to the United States 3 weeks ago that we had to launch a full-scale war against them. No one's even arguing that because it's stupid and the facts don't support it. So why did we do this when we did it? Because Israel wanted to do it. They chose the timing here. No one disputes that. And timing in war, as in life, is a lot of it, and it determines outcome. And they hadn't thought through what was going to happen next. The Israelis hadn't, and we hadn't, because we didn't have time to.
It sounds to me like you think he has betrayed it.
This war is clearly contrary to what he promised and contrary to the idea that your leaders should put your interests before those of foreigners, period. We put Israel's interests before ours. Trump did that. Bibi's wasn't elected president of my country. My president was. I supported him, obviously, voted for him. But yeah.
Let's talk about the way the debate develops in this country, because I think you're right. It's extremely difficult to talk about the subject that you and I have just spent the last half hour talking about, because there is a conflation very often. Anybody who criticizes Israel is vulnerable to being called anti-Zionist or anti-Semitic, and there's conflation by the exact people you've just been talking about, in the kind of firmament of political discussion.
Do you think that's a good faith response or a tactic?
I'm about to ask you that question. Clearly, I think you and I agree. We have both been critical of the Israeli government. I just want to kind of clarify terms a bit here.
Well, I've really been critical of the Israeli government.
I've been plenty critical of the Israeli government. I've told you at the beginning that we were against this war.
What do you think of Gaza?
What do I think of Gaza?
Yeah.
I think the war in Gaza, to start with, was a perfectly reasonable response in response to the horrors of October 7th. I think now the places, I mean, I've been there. Have you been to Gaza? I've been to Gaza since the war started.
They would not
it's
let
catastrophic.
me into Gaza. Trust me, very few journalists get into Gaza.
Yeah, no, I went with the IDF. It's the only way.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't you think the reason why you got that level of unprecedented access is because of your inability to address the realities that are going on, such as the genocide taking place, where you say it's a war, or the apartheid that Israel has implemented?
That you can go in, but nonetheless you go in and you see a flattened place. I think it is a disaster for the future of Israel, a disaster for the Palestinian people, a horror, 70,000 people dead.
Why would you describe it first as a disaster for the future of Israel? You've got tens of thousands of civilians murdered, but it's foremost a disaster for the future of Israel? No, it's foremost a disaster for the families of the dead kids.
Absolutely. I made 3 points.
Because everybody sucks up to Israel in this way that suggests they're afraid. And everyone is afraid, and you know that. Everyone's like, the real problem is calling people anti-Semites allows real anti-Semites to flourish. It's like, no, actually, the real problem with calling people anti-Semites who aren't is accusing the innocent of a crime they didn't commit. And the real crime in Gaza is killing people who did nothing wrong. So those are the real problems, I would say. But no one can say it because you have to be like, oh no, but really, October 7th
I don't know what you're talking about, Kaz. We're having a...
Everyone watching this knows what I'm talking about.
Well, let's get on to that right now.
Yeah.
Because you are critical of the government of Israel. Do you believe in Israel's right to exist? Would you consider yourself a Zionist in that narrow definition?
What does that mean, a right to exist?
The existence of the political state of Israel as
but
it
has
existed,
a right. What does that mean?
That you think it should continue in its existence as a state right now. So you do not.
Why did the Economist post this? Even Nas Daily didn't post his clip. Yeah. I mean, they don't care because like win or lose, they still win, right? Like, look. Yeah, this has 692,000 views in 4 days. Probably one of the best performing Economist videos of all time. It doesn't even matter if they get fucking owned here, right? It's still The Economist. The point is, like, does Israel have a right to exist is like a trap question, right? And Tucker Carlson is too media trained to ever fall into that trap. He's not going to say no state has a right to exist. That's far too woke. He's just basically going to, flip the question back on its head. I will answer that question with, I don't think any state that is, I don't think any state that's genociding a population has a right to exist. Did Nazi Germany have a right to exist? Does apartheid South Africa have a right to exist? States exist. Right? What is this? Scoop. CIA source tells me CIA has hard evidence that Turkey, more specifically the Erdogan administration, has specifically directed spending for podcasts to undermine the Trump administration's Middle East agenda. The CIA has evidence of this Turkish funding going to at least one female podcaster and at least one male podcaster. Turkey is the largest financier of the Muslim Brotherhood. Have you guys noticed that Laura Loomer cares a lot more about Israel's policy goals than she does about American policy goals? She always tries to couch Israeli targets and Israeli foreign policy goals as though it's like somehow relevant to America. But we know. Political reporters and news anchors keep asking Americans in politics and media, are you a Zionist? What a weird question. Do we have an obligation to be a Zionist? Is that a gotcha question? Do we have to swear allegiance to a nationalist ideology of a different country? Imagine if they asked every politician, are you Turkish nationalist? What the fuck? And the expectation was that you have to say yes, or are you a Peruvian nationalist? Why? Why do I have to be a nationalist for Israel or any other country? What an insane piece of propaganda. It's a great take. It's true. Yeah, the concept of right to exist is only applied to Israel. When Israel decides Lebanon doesn't have a right to exist as a contiguous state, then all of a sudden that question is not asked. So we already know this bullshit, right? It's completely ridiculous. It's completely and utterly ridiculous. Israel does not have a right to maintain an occupation over 6 million Palestinians, okay? That's it. They don't have a right to do that. It's illegal. Apartheid is illegal. Genocide is illegal. It's the crime of all crimes. Israel has done both. And if you defend it, you're defending a criminal entity. If you're defending this, then you're defending the complete destruction of international human rights, humanitarian law, all together. The rules of conflict, every single thing that we have implemented in the aftermath of World War II and the atrocities of the Holocaust, you're casting aside to defend a fascist state. Okay? It's unbelievable.
Iran, for example.
Well, let me just ask, since you asked me the question, it's fair for me to get you to define the term so I can answer it. You've asked two questions. The first was, do you believe Israel has a right to exist? And the second question was, do you believe Israel should continue to go on as a nation state? And those are very different questions. So I often hear the phrase...
Having been created as a political entity in 1948,
does it have a right to exist? Is that what you're asking?
I don't want to get hung up on the right to
No.
Should it?
No.
Oh man, he actually came back from fucking Cuba, lame as hell. True, it's a beautiful country. I wish he could have stayed longer.
No,
should it continue to exist? That's how I define narrowly Zionism.
Because the phrase you used was devised by the Israeli government. Of course, does it have a right to exist? And so my question to you would be, what does that mean?
Why don't you answer my question? It's a very simple question.
I don't know what your question is. Are you asking, does it have a right to exist, or do I want it to exist? Do I seek its destruction?
Fine, answer it that way.
Well, of course I don't seek its destruction. I've already said, as you know, because I said it to you, I don't want Israel to be destroyed or have to use nuclear weapons.
We've established that you are in that narrow terms of Zionist. If that's how
I'm in no sense a Zionist. I don't want any country to be destroyed at all, and I don't want people to die, particularly ones who committed no crime, because I don't.
Yeah, Tucker Carlson is like weaseling his way out of this question, which is interesting. But he's confident enough to be able to carry himself through this conversation, and he's also on the right side of the moral equation here, and therefore people will give him a lot of grace. But the answer is very simple. Israel already exists, but Israel's violating every rule in the rule book. Okay? The actual question, if you want to flip it on its head and ask her a question, is the real question is not whether or not Israel has a right to exist. The real question is whether or not Israel has a right to commit a genocide, whether or not Israel has a right to commit an apartheid, which is an incredibly violent endeavor. Israel is a settler colonial enterprise. Israel is a settler colonial entity that is justifies itself through the concept of Zionism, which is a racist ideology. When white Christians behave in the same way that Zionists do in Israel, we call that out. We say that's the Klan. We say you are a white supremacist. But when Israelis act as though they are Jewish supremacists, all of a sudden, that's allowed. I say that's not allowed. It's that simple. So the question I have for you is, why do you think that's allowed? Why do you think that's appropriate? You don't think it's appropriate if white people do it. So why do you think it's appropriate when it happens in Israel? Because that's basically the moral foundation of Zionism.
believe in killing innocents, period. That's the basis of Western civilization. Eastern civilization, it's a whole different view. They believe in collective punishment. I don't.
So you're in no sense a Zionist?
I don't even know what that means. Why don't you define the term, and then I'll tell you whether I am.
I've just defined it. And
What's
you
a
said
Zionist?
that a Zionist, in my narrow term, this definition is that the state of Israel, the political state of Israel, has the right to continue existing.
Okay, great. Then you hit him with the Zoran technique. The state of Israel already exists, but no state has a right to exist as a religious ethno-state. Okay? Especially a religious ethno-state that was built on top of land where indigenous people lived, to the tune of millions. Okay? 750,000 indigenous Palestinians were ethnically cleansed from their ancestral homelands so that Israel could be designed. So Israel's first act in its inception was a crime, a heinous crime. So no, I don't believe that Israel has a right to exist as an apartheid state. I do not believe that Israel has a right to exist as a state that conducts genocide. I don't believe that Israel has a right to exist as a occupant state dominating the lives of 6 million Palestinians, 3 in the West Bank and 3 in Gaza. Those numbers have changed, obviously, since October 7, 2023. And I don't believe that Israel has a right to deny Palestinians entry back into their homelands, which it currently does. There's 15 million Palestinians total. 9 of them are not allowed back. They're not allowed back to see their families. They're not allowed back to live in their ancestral homelands. This is a crime. And the entire world knows it's a crime. But the entire world can't say anything because the most powerful country on the planet, the United States of America, allows this to continue. And the United States of America allows this to continue with unlimited taxpayer-funded dollars and weapons. Israel gets to have free health care. We do not, because we got their defense covered. Israel gets to have free college education. We do not, because we cover their offensive weapon capabilities. And what does Israel do with all of that? They go and blow up the entire neighborhood. And then they call us to come and defend them. And we're currently going through the last version of this, the last iteration of this conflict, where Israel goaded the American government to go wage war with Iran. How is that in any way, shape, or form appropriate? It's not. It's ridiculous. If Lithuania tried to do this, you would call it out. If Saudi Arabia tried to do this, you would call it out. You don't call it out when Israel does it. You should ask yourself, why?
Right. Where does that right come from? What do you mean? These are like, I'm not being a lawyer about it. I just want to know what you're asking me.
You answered the question.
Because I don't know what you're asking me.
Let's go to the
Wait,
third.
no. I think a lot. You don't want to define your question, and I don't know why. I don't know what you're asking me. I've already said I don't want Israel to be destroyed. I don't want anyone to be killed.
Boom.
And you've said, does Israel have a right to exist? Does it have my question is, what right are you talking about? Does Britain have a right to exist? Does the United States have a right to exist?
There was a world order built up after 1945 which suggested that aggression should not be condoned into countries. That countries with borders have the right to continue.
I totally agree with that.
Okay.
Which is why the first thing that Israel did within 2 weeks of this war starting, which is supposedly existential for them, was take southern Lebanon, take someone else's country, as they have done repeatedly. And no one even mentions that. And so I guess I would be opposed to that, because I guess I think Lebanon has a right to exist. I thought Gaza had a right to exist. But I noticed that as soon as we start apportioning rights, only one country gets them.
No, I did not say that. You're absolutely putting words into my mouth.
So because I believe, here's what I do believe, since you asked. I believe in universally applicable standards. And if they're not universally applicable, they're not standards, they're preferences. That's why I believe in human rights, not ethnic rights. I don't think Jews have more rights or less rights than anyone else. I don't think Christians have more rights or less rights, blacks, Filipinos. I believe in human rights that derive from the creation of people by God.
Yeah, I think it's unbearable that Tucker Carlson gets to outflank most of the Democratic Party, and our, 2028 presidential nominees, presidential hopefuls are saying stuff like this. Here is Governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, talking about Governor of California, Gavin Newsom, referring to apartheid in Israel, right? And he's actually criticizing Gavin Newsom. This was on the 15th of March.
That then leads to a broader question. You mentioned apartheid, right? Or that was the comment that was made. And I would just say, as we engage in that, we should first address this fundamental question of what do we want in that region? And if we really want peace, and I believe you want that, then we've also got to be acknowledging that language matters here, that words matter. And then we've got to use words that are actually rooted in reality and are able to bring the temperature down to create a space for that peace, for that opportunity. And so that's how I view this entire conflict. I would also say that
you can't be a liberal and defend apartheid, I think. I mean, like, my perspective on this is that, yeah, liberals are shameless monsters for the most part. There are obviously self-identifying liberals who are kind-hearted and good individuals that are horrified by the realities that Israel presents, right? But, like, you can't call yourself a liberal and then do this. You can't. Like, liberalism is supposed to represent a defense of human rights. You can't do that. This is against it. This is antagonistic. And not only that, but also, this is if this is going to be a defining image of your 2028 run, you're going to lose. As I like to say always, and repeat myself over and over again, it's my favorite fact. Today is the most popular Israel will be in the United States of America going forward. Tomorrow, Israel will be less popular. Israel was more popular yesterday than it was today. Now think about that. Think about that 2 years from now. Where will we be as a society in our attitude towards Israel? These guys cannot read the room at all, and they think they can put the toothpaste back in the tube. They can't.
It is really important that we create space, which you do, for dialogue that is thoughtful, and dialogue that's rooted in reality, and dialogue where we're precise with our words, where we're able to acknowledge there's a lot of nuance on these issues, and we should debate them. And just because people have different opinions doesn't make them a bad person. And just because someone doesn't agree with the Netanyahu government, which I don't on many, many things, doesn't make him an anti-Semite.
But you agree with them on the idea that Israel's not an apartheid, or at least you want to look the other way as Israel continues being an apartheid state. This idea that, like, we're talking about small bean Israel as though it's not an apartheid state that is conducting a genocide, that's currently engaging in more land grabs and ethnic cleansing in Lebanon. Literally, as we're having this conversation, that's what's happening. Is currently doing bombing campaigns and engaging in chemical warfare against another sovereign state, Iran, that has actually collapsed the entire energy markets around the globe. The notion that this is a small bean country that we have to hold space for is utterly ridiculous. Especially ridiculous when you are having this conversation as an American citizen, an American governor in an American state, and it is in defense of American tax dollars going there to continue this violent endeavor, this violent process that is not only immoral, it's unjustifiable, it's inhumane, but it's also illegal. It's illegal by American laws. The Leahy Law makes it illegal. There's no defense of Israel. And every day, more and more people are learning about the heinous ways in which Israel operates. So it's over. It's up to you to recognize that. But if you can't recognize it, you're not going to win a fucking election. It's that simple.
Just because I disagree with Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't make me an anti-Semite. in as much as
Also, you don't get to dictate the terms of like how we can criticize Israel, a foreign country. There's no argument, right? There's no argument. Imagine if I ran around telling people like, how dare you talk about what Turkey does to the Kurds in northern Syria? You're engaging in Turkophobia. You should lose your job. I get to dictate as a Turkish person, I get to dictate how you can criticize the Turkish government. You don't get to have a say in this process. You can criticize Erdogan. You simply cannot criticize Turkey as a nation state. You can't criticize Turkish actions. It's ridiculous. Everyone would laugh at me.
because I disagree with Donald Trump doesn't make me any less of an American patriot. So I just think we've got to be really thoughtful and careful and not just look for buzzwords and not just sort of follow,
It's not a buzzword. It's a legal definition, and Israel fits it. And that's why you have to say it's a buzzword. Problem is, he isn't even Israeli. I know, but he actually volunteered for the Israeli occupying forces, as a matter of fact. He also did work for the Israeli embassy, as a matter of fact. Many of you might not know this, which is why it was perfectly valid and reasonable for Kamala Harris to ask him whether or not he had actually ever worked with the Mossad. That's right. He did both of those things. And that's precisely the reason why he's currently talking about how this is just a buzzword. Apartheid is just a buzzword.
what's going to get maybe some likes on Twitter, but we've got to be thoughtful about a debate that is really, really hard to have, and we've got to have it.
It's not that hard to have. It's hard for you. Let's talk reality. A Jewish baby born today in the West Bank community will have full rights in Israel, a vote in national elections, and access to civilian courts. A Palestinian baby born in that same community will have no democratic rights, tight restrictions on their movement, frequent harassment from settlers, and no access to justice beyond what Israel's unaccountable military courts mete out. That's apartheid. It's that simple. I'll never understand why Jewish Americans will ride so fucking hard for Israel. You live here, you're a governor here, you're a governor of an American state. You're not in Israel, you don't live there. It's unfucking believable. Anyway, there's also the other side of this equation. Here's Gavin Newsom engaging in a lightning round. Okay? And in the lightning round, they ask him about Israel, Cuba, and Taiwan. Let's take a look at what he had to say.
Adjacent questions. Do you consider yourself a Zionist?
Do I consider myself a Zionist? I believe, I revere the state of Israel. I'm proud to support the state of Israel. I deeply, deeply oppose Bibi Netanyahu's leadership, his opposition to the two-state solution, and deeply oppose how he is indulging the far right as it relates to what's going on in the West Bank.
Do you regret using the word apartheid to describe Israel?
I used it, I do in this context.
He said he reveres the state of Israel, reveres the genocidal apartheid entity. And then you motherfuckers, not you in this community, but so many motherfuckers had the audacity to be like, Hasan, how dare you? How dare you say you wouldn't vote for Gavin Newsom? Yeah, he got a boss call. Vindicated again. Take that victory lap, big dog. Of course. Yeah, he said he regrets using the word apartheid. He just stands for nothing. He stands for nothing.
That I said it and I referenced why I used it. A Tom Friedman article in that same sentence where Tom used it in the context of the direction that Bibi is going.
Not the current
and the
state.
concern, correct.
Okay.
And that is
It's in the direction of apartheid. When will it be in apartheid, do you think? When will it be in apartheid? If it's not currently, do you understand what an apartheid is? Do Palestinians have equal rights and equal representation? No, they don't. They don't. There are two tiers in Israel, in both inside of the borders, the 1948 borders that were drawn up, where there are Palestinian citizens of Israel that don't have the same rights as Israeli citizens do, full-blown Israeli citizens do, Jewish citizens of Israel do. And then it all goes down from there, with the Palestinians in Gaza having the least amount of rights because they're, under a complete blockade and They live in a hermetically sealed open-air prison. They've been genocided for the past 2.5 years. And the Palestinians living in the West Bank, the occupied West Bank, are living under constant Israeli occupation, having their lives and livelihoods destroyed by settler terrorism on a daily fucking basis, being purged from their homelands, having their farms destroyed, their animals killed, subject to routine humiliation, and in many instances, even death. And their killers get no accountability whatsoever. And they are protected entirely by the Israeli occupation forces.
Is a legitimate concern I have that I share with Tom, that direction, if that vision in that direction of the far right that Bibi is indulging, that if they see the full annexation of the West Bank, then that's not something. That's a word you may hear others use.
Should the U.S. try to bring democracy to Cuba?
We've been trying to do that for 70 years, dumb as we want to be. Continue to do what you've done, you'll get what you got. I appreciate in one respect that the Trump administration sort of approaching things because of opportunistic that situation regarding Venezuela, that this quasi-blockade has created conditions where now we have 51 prisoners that have been released, that we're having a different conversation with the leadership, that we're negotiating a different framework from a different...
Again, he's appreciating Donald Trump's insane violations of all fucking rules. I mean, this is not like a simple process concern, right? Like we have to respect the dignity and sovereignty of other countries. We can't just like collapse the entire system. Even administrations of the past would at least try to operate within the confines of international human rights. Even if they, were routinely violating it, they would try to make it seem as though that was not the case. Donald Trump is giving the game away, and liberals are also showing their asses. They're saying, yeah, we like it.
Position of strength. So I appreciate and admire at least a willingness to iterate. But look, this you talk about a dictatorship.
Right.
You're talking about Maduro. No love lost for Maduro. You're talking about a dictatorship. You're talking about the leadership in Cuba today.
Yeah.
So pursuing those values, absolutely.
Should the U.S.
Donald Trump's mass starvation of 11 million Cubans living on the island of Cuba, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Now, the reason why I watched Tucker Carlson first before we got here is because I don't know what's in Tucker Carlson's heart. I don't know what's in his soul. I think Tucker Carlson's a grifter. He's a right-winger. He's a white supremacist, a white nationalist, whatever you want to fucking call it, right? I've been tracking Tucker Carlson since 2016, and I find him to be one of the most dangerous right-wing reactionary assets in this country. Okay? But compare what Tucker Carlson is saying, because not everyone has been paying attention to Tucker Carlson since 2016, especially with a critical lens like I have, or maybe as you have. Compare what Tucker Carlson is saying to what Gavin Newsom has said thus far about Israel and what he's saying now about Israel. In a matchup between Tucker Carlson and Gavin Newsom, Tucker Carlson wins that election easily. Okay? Easily. Not even a question. Tucker Carlson wins by Reagan numbers.
Defend Taiwan if the Chinese invade Taiwan?
Well, I think we've had a strategic ambiguity, which has defined the United States' position for decades. I submit to that point of view. Those conditions will present themselves on the basis of whatever the facts are on the ground. But I will say this, I'm very concerned about what's going on in the Middle East for an additional reason. Then we've now taken the eye off the ball with the summit with President Xi. And this will define more things in more ways on more days in terms of our fate and future, the competitiveness in China versus the United States. And I will just play into one statewide thing. The reason I am so fixated on this issue of green energy is it's about innovation and it's about competition. The reason I'm not focused on electric power, I'm focused on economic power as it relates to EVs. And
yeah, I mean, the rest of this is bullshit. it's unbearable. I think these guys genuinely think that the American population is so stupid that they just hear things that you would hear out of Kamala Harris coming out of the mouth of a guy who looks like he should be president of a B movie, and they'll eat it up. And maybe some will. Why aren't the Democratic hopefuls ringing the alarm bells about total economic collapse? Like, what do they plan for ruling over in 3 years? I just don't think that they're thinking that far ahead. I don't think it's going to be that big of an issue, though, because Democrats that run and lead by fear will lose. They'll lose. It's that simple. Democrats who can say the truth will win. Just say the truth. I find it really frustrating that we just simply cannot say the truth. I don't like it. I think it's totally ridiculous that we have to like keep up with certain lies that we tell ourselves, certain lies that we tell others in order not to offend because we're fearful of the repercussions, the backlash. Americans are smarter than we give them credit. Okay? If that wasn't the case, they would not have had such a dramatic shift in attitude towards Israel in spite of 80 years of propaganda, one of the most sophisticated, pervasive lobbying and propaganda instruments anyone has ever seen, not just in the United States of America, but certainly in many Western countries as well. But it's exceptional in the United States of America. We're a country that has placed a lot of emphasis on the First Amendment. You ask any American, they'll say they love freedom of speech. 38 states have violated free speech at the behest of a foreign nation state. In 38 states, you have to sign loyalty pledges to say you will never protest the state of Israel in order to get gainful employment. It's unbelievable. It's totally insane. And when you actually explain it to people, they look at you like you're crazy. And yet, in spite of all of that, Americans have been able to overcome decades of propaganda from mainstream news that justified Israel's violent actions or maybe sheltered you from the truth. And now people are aware. It's totally ridiculous. It's totally idiotic to try and continue to defend this foreign country that is dominating American foreign policy in very meaningful ways right now. That's it. Like I said, it doesn't matter because I think people like Gavin Newsom are, they're not to be worried about. Because it's clear that like they're too fearful to say the truth.